Hello, I'm Battlescar1313, and I'm here to tell you my pick of the best weapons in Final Fantasy history. I will be including all main titles spanning from 1 through 15 and include some spin-offs like Tactics or Type 0. Number 15 on the list is the Magus Rod. First appearing in Final Fantasy III, it continued to be the top tier for magic users all throughout the series. It exists in Final Fantasy III, 5, 6, 7-ish, 9, as well as in Tactics. In 14th place, we got Missing Score in Final Fantasy VII and Type 0. It won't be a surprise to see this weapon show up in other Final Fantasies as a gun type weapon. But if you manage to get this with Barret in Final Fantasy VII, it can actually break the game if you have 8 Mastered Knights of the Rounds equipped to it. The Onion Knight is on the list simply because of the name itself being associated with one of the best job classes in Final Fantasy history. The difficulty to get this in Final Fantasy X is incredible. You have to dodge 200 lightning bolts and meet other requirements before it can be yours. The power comes from Magic Booster and one Impicos, making Lulu a spellcasting machine. At number 12, we have Zwill Crossblades. Even though they can be found in 6 Advanced and in Final Fantasy IX, the Zwill Crossblades get real interesting in 12, where they become the second fastest weapon in the game. Moving on to Final Fantasy 15, they are Ignas' ultimate dagger. Even in Tactics, they can be pushed off of plague horrors, which can be found easily on. They do appear in Type 0 being equipable by Rem, so you can see Zero Crossblades by Rem in Type 0. Now we move on to Kaiser Knuckles in the 11th spot on our list. Sometimes they appear as overpowered accessories that increase our strength, but other times they are a monk's weapon of choice. You can use them as a weapon in the following titles: 3 as a monk, a black belt, or a onion knight, 7 in Final Fantasy VI, Tifa in Final Fantasy VII, Amarant in Final Fantasy IX, and any weapon for Riku that has break damage limit as its dominating ability. Oh, and 8 can use them in Type 0. We're getting to the top 10 of the list. I would like to thank Yuffie from Final Fantasy VII for making an oversized shuriken as her weapon type. The reason for this is so high on the list is because in earlier titles, they were only throwable items ninjas could throw. They were a great way to deal big damage and even had other enhanced shurikens as well. Now at number 9 we have Death Penalty, which in Final Fantasy VII you can break the game. It has a one-shot kill method where killing a lot of enemies with Vincent, the death penalty will eventually be able to kill just about anything in the game. But we also have it in 15 as a DLC, and that is used by, I believe, Prompto. Speaking of long-range weapons, though, we added a bow which sticks in the main titles. The Artemis and the Yushi bows appear in some versions of Final Fantasy 2, 3, 4, 5, and 12, as well as appearing in Tactics series. And Trey from Final Fantasy Type 0 uses the bow Artemis as well. Now we are at a tie at number 7, the Masamune and Muramasa. The Masamunes being the main focus because it appears from Final Fantasy 1 to most likely every future installment. It has a great hit percentage and is usually the strongest katana weapon in a Final Fantasy game. Now at number 6 we have instant death weapons. If it had an attack power of 1 and gave a good chance to instantly kill your enemy, that's still good odds to me. Mainly throughout the series they use Deathbringer and Assassin's Daggers. There are many weapons that include death as a passive attack, but on the undead they kind of suck. Number 5 is an odd pick for me, but Hiller's Staff comes to mind as a really good weapon for a white mage. It can be found in the earlier Final Fantasy titles um, as well as the original, part 2, 4, 5, 10, and tactics. Usually it is associated with curing. What I like to do is hit my party members with it to cure them, but it also damages the undead. When it isn't used for on-hit cures, it still proves to be a powerful weapon. So don't always think healer staff is going to heal your allies. Sometimes, like in Final Fantasy 13, it's just a weapon. And number 4, we got the Dragon Whisker, which can be found in Final Fantasy 4, 5, 9, 12, 14, 15, Tactics, and many other titles. It is known as a pole made out of the whiskers of a dragon. If you find this, it may just save your game. There are many lances in the series like Venus Gospel, but none of them seem to be as symbolic as Kane's lance. I say this because before Final Fantasy IV, no one would have guessed that Square Enix would have released this weapon in so many other titles. It makes its first appearance in 9 with Freya using it, and also appears in 10, 13, and Type 0. The number 2 spot on the list, it's going to the first character in history to wield a gunblade. The answer was simple. It had to be Squall's Lionheart from Final Fantasy VIII. Even if it doesn't shoot out bullets like the counterpart in 13 does, Squall was still able to deal massive damage with his weapon and deal quad 9s. Now at number 1, you may have noticed that I didn't mention any Knight Swords very much. That is because they are all tied. I would like to say that Chaos, Ultimate Weapon, Omega Weapon, Ragnarok, Excalibur, or even weaker but still good, Save the Queen, and Blood Sword. There are many good weapons out there like Turn of Soul, but they're all kind of almost equally as good. And usually you don't have a handful of knights that are going to wear them. But that was the ones that I think in the whole history of Final Fantasy is just the ones that are really legendary. So that's my list, and I hope you have a good time watching. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe for future updates.